What do you guys think about this entire situation? Is it even a situation? There's something to even talk about. Just what do you guys think about everything going on with the Marlins right now?
So more and more it came out that it appears that one or two players, a handful at most, were talking about Jazz Chisholm behind his back, among a bunch of other things that they had to get out in the open. But one of the biggest things that seemed to rile Twitter up was that people were talking about Jazz behind his back, and it seems like Don Mattingly wanted to get all that out in the open. And if that is the case, and if that is accurate, I actually respect that a lot. It's interesting watching everyone try to figure out who the veterans were that don't approve of the way that he shows up to the stadium. I would love to know who made the Dennis Rodman comment. And it's one of those things. It's funny. Dennis Rodman won rings, so I don't understand exactly what the issue would be with Jazz showing up in whatever he wants to show up in.
So it definitely is a topic, Daniel. It's something that shouldn't happen in the middle of a season to have your most marketable star player on the team. And Kim Ng was in the locker room during this, which was very interesting to me. I posted on Twitter today. She's in the locker room during this meeting, apparently watching her star player get criticized for, how he shows up to the park, what he does, the way that he handles himself, which, we don't know everything. We do know a couple things. I can tell you that, Jazz is Jazz, and he's going to be who he is. He's never going to be anybody else but himself. He said that himself. I can tell you that I know that he shows up to the ballpark late sometimes. He shows up wearing whatever the hell he wants, stuff like some of these old time guys, they don't like it. So they look at that and they see this guy as a guy that is undisciplined. Is that true? I honestly don't think it's necessarily like the biggest deal in the world, but apparently some of this locker room did. And as we know from reports that have come out, like Miguel Rojas was the main culprit here. Like he was going after him and other veterans as well, probably, as Alex said. So, yeah, I mean, it's a situation. And the fact that Kim Ng is sitting there listening to it is interesting to me for sure. Yeah, but I mean, man, like I said, this is the most marketable guy on this team. They have giveaways of his blue hair. You got to let this guy be himself because this is the future of the franchise. So not that you want a loose cannon or anything, but I don't think Jazz is that. I think Jazz is himself. And as long as you're being yourself and you're not a disruption to anybody else, you're fine. So I think outside of a couple guys, Miggy being a main one, I think that they're okay and they're united. But I think if there's anybody that has a true problem, it could have probably been handled amongst that small group of people rather than the entire team, and create this huge distraction where Mattingly's coming out saying, yeah, I think it distracted them. They're going to come out flat and everything else. Cooper's laughing it off like, what the hell is this? I don't even know what the hell this is. It was a waste of time. So I think it could have been handled amongst that smaller group of people and not the entire team. But they swept the series. I think they're moving on, and I think that's what we can say about it.
And a question for everyone. When was the last time would you say the Marlins had a player as marketable as Jazz, where you could put him on mainstream media, put him on there, he could put, good marketing, he could sell jerseys? When was the last time the Marlins had this kind of player?
I would say never. I would say never.
I think Stan on the ESPN body issue, Stanton and Jose were pretty marketable. I think those are the last time.
Yeah, Stanton, yeah, and Jose, yeah. But I mean, honestly, I don't think the Marlins have ever had this big of a personality ever in the clubhouse. He just seems like a cool, laid back guy, and like he said himself that he doesn't care. He knows failure is part of baseball. We all know that. He knows that as a player. He could go over for it in a day, but as long as he's having fun on the field, that's all that matters to him. So I honestly don't really see how anybody would have a huge problem with this guy just because of how full of life he is, how much he's always smiling, how much he's always willing to engage with fans no matter what. So I really don't honestly see how anybody – obviously we don't know everything, but this guy is a personality and he is such a likable guy. Whether he's hitting 250, 260, 300, 350, it doesn't matter. He's so likable. And I honestly, I've said this to you guys before, obviously it doesn't apply to pitchers as much as his position players, but I think this is going to be the first time in a while that you see a Marlins player get voted into an All-Star game by fans. And there's something to be said for that because it doesn't happen a lot.
I feel like, can I say something? I feel like the Marlins should market him as much as possible. There should be billboards in Miami right now with his face on it because he's probably he reminds me of Ken Griffey Jr. with his personality because he's so he's excited, he's happy, he enjoys the game, and he makes you want to watch him. And I feel like that's something special that the Marlins need to really go all out with.
And this is the kind of market that would love that, because admittedly there are some markets where they just want you to play the right way. Don't show up with blue hair. But Miami is one of the few markets in the country where absolutely, yeah, people, if you put him on a billboard and you marketed like his wacky personality, I think people would eat that up down here.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, Alex, that you mentioned before about how about how the veterans feel about him, it's also weird because, and again, we don't know everything. He might have just been saying stuff, but Richard Blyer was in an Athletic article a few days ago, and he even said, I have his quote right here. Here's part of his quote. He said, he always says hi. He's very respectful to us veterans, and he doesn't think he's better than anybody. So Richard Blyer, speaking on behalf of the veterans, seems to think that everything was cool as of like 5 days ago.
The only thing I'll say about that, and that's a great quote, and it kind of defends the point that I made before about how can you dislike this guy. I really do think that. But the other side of it is this, is that we're not there all the time. We hear what we hear. We report what we report to everybody else, those of us that go to games and those of us that are connected. All of us, not just anybody that's on here, but other people as well, Craig included. Like we just report what we hear. You're not going to hear everything. So maybe something happened and there was a moment of conflict, and that's definitely possible, right? Thankfully, it didn't get to Monte Harrison levels or anything like that. That's the good part, right? But the other part is, this guy knows he's good. He does, and he's friends with Acuna. He's kind of part of that kind of crop. I would say kind of maybe a step down a little bit from Ronald Acuna in terms of being brash. This guy seems a little bit more humble, but I mean, without breaking into his full personality profile, it just seems like a happy dude and like a guy that I'd want to be around as a baseball player, a person, teammate. And we've been around him, and he's a joy to be around and a great guy. So, like I said, I honestly don't see how anybody could. When it came out that it was Jazz, I'm like, wow. I mean, other than him being good and maybe somebody being jealous that he's good, that's like really the only thing I can point to and say that would be the issue. But that's on the player that has the problem, not Jazz himself. So honestly, I hope they move past it. I think they will. Going on and sweeping a series, Jazz hitting 2 bombs. Just put a nail in it. It's over. Let's get past it.
As much I do want to get past it, I think we need to point out that there are some things Jazz does that are not selfish, but can be self-absorbed. The way that every single night, if he does anything good in a game, he rushes to Twitter and rushes to Instagram right after the game, win or lose, to share his highlights. That is not a typical, normal veteran baseball thing to do at all by anybody else, kind of aside from him on this Marlins team. For a guy that gets as much exposure as he does, so much of it, he seems to focus on himself instead of like drawing his teammates into it in terms of his media appearances. And again, this is like outside the clubhouse stuff. And you would think that his teammates know him better internally and don't really care, shouldn't really be concerned about the way that he presents himself outwardly. But that is something that makes him different, I'll say. So if you're wondering about things that he does differently than a traditional ball player and why traditional players on this team may have an issue with it, I think it's that approach that he at least takes when he's projecting himself outward, that so much of it is just about him and instead of the Marlins as a collective group.
I think that'll go away as he grows with the game, honestly, Eli. And I think you're right. I honestly think that he does do that. Like, if there's a tweet about him, he's going to retweet it. But I think he just wants to be connected with those that are speaking about him and with the fan base as well. So I think that's definitely something that he does that not maybe every baseball player does, like you said, especially a Major League Baseball player. But I don't have a problem with that. Hey, you did it on the field. You deserve the recognition, and he should be able to call himself out. So I really don't have a problem with that. I don't really think that anybody would blame him for taking credit for his success. But I don't think he shies away from failure either. Like I said, I think there were press conferences that we had in years past where people would ask him, hey, what were you thinking here? And it was not a good moment. And he's owned up to it. So I think it's both sides. I think he's an accountable player, but he should be able to take credit for his success because why not? So, yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I think as he gets older, maybe after he signs his first big contract, stuff like that will probably go away. So, yeah, I think he's okay for that.